I was very pleased to be invited to join in the discussion this morning. And I think after the past 18 exhausting months of experience in schools, it's to take a breath now, particularly after the recent report from Dimbleby coming out, to take a breath and consider where we are and what we are actually doing in schools. So thank you very much for asking me to contribute. Just a bit about me. I do have a B.Ed in home economics, and I'm not actually sure you can still get a B.Ed in home economics. But after doing that, I went on and eventually, having taught in a very diverse school with a mixture of traditional North London with Turkish, Irish, Somali, Italian and Caribbean, all girls. I can well remember being a newbie food teacher and having to deconstruct a lasagna to demonstrate to the students that everything that went into a lasagna they were very familiar with. They just hadn't seen it put together in that way before. And that's a really lasting memory of mine of very early teaching. Now I went on and created this thing called the Purple Kitchen with a business partner, tapping into early years activities. You could do things like sport and football and all sorts of things, but the essentials of cooking with your child you couldn't do outside the home. And so many people at home will bake. They'll bake biscuits, they'll bake cakes. They won't consider involving their children in making the meal for themselves. They won't consider them handling vegetables and so on. So that's where we started from with the work that we did. And we focused on skills. We focused on experience with handling lots of different ingredients. And we also focused on tasting. And that's become part of my involvement in the charity of Flavour School, which follows the Sapere method of children handling and experiencing different ingredients. So it'd be great if you can look that one up. You'll be interested for early years and primary schools. So the CBeebies shows were a fantastic way of following on for our experience of working in Little Village Hall. And we're beamed into people's homes with the preschoolers pulling at their parents' sleeves saying, I want to make that. And we knew very early on that we had to concentrate on a range of recipes, not all sweet. In fact, in I Can Cook, it's half sweet and half savoury. And in our latest My World Kitchen, it's only a quarter sweet and the rest are meat, vegetable based and fish, to echo the balance of the kind of foods that children should be eating and nudge parents in the right direction. And my master's in food policy was exploring key stage 1, 2 and 3 with the government policy of compulsory food education and finding out the potential for the teaching, and also the fact that the support wasn't there in training at the PGCE and degree level. And I don't know whether that's changed. I don't think it has changed very much. So the ethos of what we do in My World Kitchen is we took the view that every child lives a different life, even though their front door may look the same, which we know from the children that we see at school. Every child has a different food repertoire that they have within their home, and that's obviously early years is ring fenced by the parent. And every child has a different language about food, the language they hear spoken about at home. They might hear that things will give them energy, or they might hear things will make them run faster, or they might hear that crusts will make their hair curly. So all the different language they hear about food, and they may see their parents behaving around food in a positive or a not so positive way as well. We also wanted to share children sharing their food. So we see children at the end of My World Kitchen sitting down at a table or on the floor and sharing what they've made with friends who have never experienced that dish before. And the most important thing to us that it would be different and diverse food experiences and traditions that we explored to demonstrate that they are valued. And this came from an experience I had as a child when I had to do an emergency sleepover and had to stay for breakfast. And breakfast is a meal that you often don't share with other people. It's very much a private family thing that happens. You might have lunch, picnics, you might have dinner out, but you don't share breakfast very often. And this house had 2 girls, we had placemats, we had napkins, we had glasses of orange juice, we had a sweet cereal, and we had a white sliced bread made into toast with jam. It was nothing like I had for breakfast. I had Weetabix, we didn't get placemats, it was all a bit of a bun fight, and there was always a cooked element. And that stuck with me, that although we looked the same and we lived in similar houses, the experience was very different. So why do we need to consider what we're doing in schools? Well, we know that what happens in the classroom is not happening in a vacuum. What we talk about in our classrooms is a minute amount of what children are hearing about food. But at school, there is an opportunity for us to make sure that our messaging is very positive. And we have the expertise. You know, we may be exhausted from rushing and making sure our rooms are food safe and COVID safe, but we have a huge amount of expertise, and we can influence by the experiences that we offer and the language that we're using. And that we really need to remember that when we're challenged. So I think some of you may have a full support of our SLT to go beyond your classroom door, but a full audit of what's going on in your school is really important. History might be talking about World War II and rationing. Religious studies may cover festivals and rules. And of course, science will be covering elements of nutrition and food science. And when I went into a new school, I emailed all the heads of department and asked them for any food content they were doing anywhere in school. The only person I heard that from was science, who gave me a full set of textbooks and access to their lesson plans. So I could echo and make sure, A, that I was echoing, and B, that we were singing from the same song sheet. You may remember quite often in Food Teacher Centre, if any of you access that, there are chats about every now and again the food pyramid popping up in PE. I was asked to later provide equipment for the RE to do a Passover meal. And maths used a chocolate brownie recipe to explain ratios, which of course then all the children wanted to cook the chocolate brownie. And I challenged the maths teacher and said, could we come up with a better example that echoes what we want children to be making? So perhaps nudge them into the direction of trying a savoury dish that explored ratios. So, you know, it's a matter of having a look beyond. We've got food experiences in lower schools, which may be cakes and bakes. It may be they're doing some fantastic stuff and you're getting children up with good knife skills, understanding of how to use equipment, understanding of how to weigh and measure. And I think the other thing, of course, is what's happening at home. I don't know whether you've seen an interview with Nadia Hussain, who said the first time she saw what an oven was for was when she went to her secondary school food lessons, because culturally they didn't use an oven. It wasn't part of their national cuisine, and her mum used the oven to store things in because they didn't use it for baking and roasting. So it's really important to understand the complexities of what's coming in, and obviously be able to respond to the huge variety, which I know is really tiring to do. So where should we focus our energy? Well, I sort of had a sit back and thought, well, if we think about the outcomes that we want, and we know that diet is the leading cause of avoidable harm to our health, This is in the evidence documents to the National Food Strategy. And the top 5 dietary risks are low in whole grains, too much processed meat, too much red meat, not enough fruit and not enough legumes. And what we need to ask ourselves is, if that is the position now, can our food work in schools respond to this challenge and offer them a better, more balanced approach that mediates those risks? Can we give the children a better experience in our classrooms? So here's the actual data, and you will see that the numbers, you know, these are preventable with diet and lifestyle changes. And we are in a position with experts in our field. We can apply this in our classroom. And if you need arguments for more budget, I think some of these charts are very useful for you to take in for budget discussions with your leadership team. And here again, we've got some more very interesting data from the supporting evidence from National Food Strategy. And we can see the way that the dietary impact and the percentage of risks that that's causing.
I just wanted to give you a 5-minute nudge, Kate, if that's okay.
Thank you. So food experiences don't have to be in a practical room. They don't have to be expensive. I know that in secondary we want to build on skills and get them ready, hopefully for following on as GCSE. But we can do small, very cheap experiences to broaden the range of foods and experiences that children are having. And thinking about post-2020, we recognise that this is an opportunity to possibly reorientate what we're doing. So we can't do that without knowing where we are. So audit your ingredient balance and recipe balance, and look for health, look for diversity, look for use of plant-based proteins, look for seasonality, and try and look for versatility and adaptability. So perhaps trying to show children that a recipe is a scaffold on which you can swap different ingredients in and out to give them more versatility. Can you teach a skill with a different recipe? So can we replace chocolate eclairs with a savoury gougere? Children will go home. If they want to make a chocolate eclair, they can do it at home because they now have the skill, they know how to make the choux pastry, but you've shown them how to do it in a savoury way. And also trying to get a handle on what language is being used around food and health. So again, interacting with the food team in the canteen and making sure that you're joined up and all, again, singing from the same song sheet. So what's the takeaway when your children are leaving your classroom is my question to you. Are all food cultures and traditions valued, and are they visible? Is the balance in step with research? Is the ingredient balance in step with sustainability and carbon reduction? And are your pupils ready to make healthy, independent food choices? And we need to think of that at end of Key Stage 3. And do they have a solid foundation of skills and knowledge? And I leave you with a thought of my daughter, who is now away, living independently. So she raised in her home, encountered all sorts of food and cultures, travelled extensively. And she rang me and asked me why there was a sprig of fresh mint in her yellow label purchase of new potatoes. So make sure when you cover a wide range of food traditions and values, regardless of the cultural diversity of your pupils. And thank you very much for asking me to contribute.